Let me start by saying that I never thought in a million years that in 2022 I would be reviewing a 6-inch Jar Jar Binks figure. I think it's fair to say that the character has received a fair amount of stick across the years. To this day, he remains one of the most derided Star Wars characters, and perhaps it's a little bit without merit, really. Obviously, the character was an invention for children, and he's there chiefly to provide comic relief, and perhaps, tonally, that isn't what the film required. For me personally, I was on the fence with this character. I neither liked nor loathed him particularly, and I have to say, in hindsight all these years later, I actually don't mind him at all. And as a child, I had numerous Jar Jar Binks figures growing up. And there's always been a part of me that's had great affection for the underdog, and I think Jar Jar Binks is certainly the underdog of the Star Wars franchise. But as a collector who definitely picks and chooses which Star Wars Black Series figures he's going to pick up, Jar Jar was not high on my list of acquisitions. That said, once I saw some of the initial pictures and this special deluxe edition, I caved and picked him up, and I have to say, I'm not disappointed. But let's start with the packaging. Obviously, this is the standard packaging we're used to seeing for the Black Series. It has that black banner, it has very minimal text and colour attached to it, except for the side panel, which we'll look at in a moment, and most of it is window display. Now, it is slightly wider, slightly fatter than we're used to seeing because this is a deluxe figure, so we can see a lot more of the accessories in the packaging. Meanwhile, on the side panel we have this image of Jar Jar, which is very nicely illustrated, and it has that slight sepia tone going from that sort of goldy orange up to black and white at the top there. Now this looks very nice when you stack these up on the shelf with other figures in the series. As you can see, these have their own identity and they look very presentable and very displayable. The back of the packaging is pretty plain. There is a little bio about the character. We have that image again on the back there, and not a lot else. So this is pretty dull, something that the Black Series figures packaging can be criticised for generally, but overall they have been massively improved by that side panel in recent years. First thing to say about Jar Jar is that he is to scale. He is slightly taller than your average Black Series figure. If they come in at 6 inches, he's probably pushing 7 inches in truth, and that's exactly the way it should be. The sculpting is absolutely perfect in my opinion. It's often difficult to talk about likenesses when we're talking about CGI character, but I think they've done a really, really good job of bringing Jar Jar to life in plastic form. This is pretty much perfect, and I think the paint applications are really nicely applied, particularly in the eyes themselves. You can see there's lots of different colours going on there, and the pattern in the eyes I think is really, really nicely captured, and yeah, I think they've done a really good job here. And as you can see, that extends to the ears as well. There's multiple different colours of orange and red going on, and a bit of brown wash here and there as well, which is absolutely fantastic. The ears are actually fairly flexible. They're not a hard plastic, so they will not impinge on any movement that you want from this character when it comes to the articulation, which is fantastic. Being a tall figure, he has lots of brand new parts. His arms are obviously much longer than on other figures. Again, very nicely painted. Lots of detail now in those sort of that skin gradation, which is lovely. We can see his torso here as well, obviously brand new pieces, and it's really nice to see the rubber vest and skirts, which again, very malleable, will not hinder the articulation at all, and look pretty faithful to what we see on screen. And this continues right the way down the legs and into the feet as well. Again, we can see these are obviously brand new pieces, unique pieces for Jar Jar. In terms of articulation, it is the standard Black Series scheme that we're used to seeing, but he does have a ball joint in his head, so he can lean his head from side to side, he can nod it up and down, and of course move it from side to side, which is fantastic. Now this is complemented by another ball joint in the neck, so there's 2 joints here, which is absolutely fantastic, and again, same level of articulation. You can nod it up and down, move it from side to side, and of course spin it left to right as well, which is fantastic. He's got ball joints in the shoulders, so of course they kick up and out. He's got a pin swivel at the elbow, so he can spin that lower arm right the way around 360 degrees, and of course hinge it to 90 degrees. There's another pin swivel at the wrist, so of course he can spin that wrist 360 degrees, and again hinge it forwards and backwards as well, which is great. Now there is this upper torso ball joint as well, which will allow him to lean from side to side, bend forwards and backwards, and spin from side to side as well. There's more ball joints in the hips, allowing the legs to kick out. There's an upper thigh swivel as well. Of course, the legs can kick forwards and backwards. And there is the double jointed knee, so we can kick that lower leg right the way back if you want him to, which is great. And then there is a final swivel at the ankle, allowing the foot to spin from side to side and hinge forwards and backwards as well, which is brilliant. Now, I did mention that he was taller than your average Black Series figure, so here he is standing next to the Remnant Stormtrooper from The Mandalorian, and here he is standing next to Ventress from the Clone Wars. As you can see, he absolutely towers above these other figures and is perfectly in scale, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, this deluxe version of the figure comes with his staff, his shield, and his energy sling. All of these accessories fit very comfortably into his grip, there's no issues there whatsoever. As we can see with this energy sling, it is nicely sculpted, but there's not a lot of paint apps to it, which is a real shame, especially when it comes to that orb, because in the film, obviously they do glow, so it would have been nice to have been a few more paint apps here. I don't have an awful lot to say about the staff, except to say it is in scale, it is nice and tall, it looks the part, there's not a lot of detailing on it or paint apps, but it looks pretty solid. And then we have the shield, which is the standout accessory for me. I think this looks absolutely brilliant. They have captured that sort of transparent purple glow to it, which I think is wonderful, and it looks really good. Again, it's in scale and it looks really formidable, so I think they've done a very, very nice job of this accessory, and is very welcome. Okay then, final thoughts. Should you pick this figure up? I think yes, if you like episode 1, if you like Star Wars generally and you want to build out your roster of aliens, unless you really hate Jar Jar, then you probably should pick this figure up because I think he's really good. For me, he is a 4-star figure. I think he's pretty much excellent in every regard. The paint apps are really nice. The articulation's brilliant, as you would expect. He comes with plenty of fun extras. The figure is doing everything right. So why only 4 stars and not 5? Well, there's a little bit of detailing and paint apps missing on some of the accessories, which always niggles me slightly when they cut corners like that. And I think some of the articulation points are a little bit unsightly. They're a little bit too obvious and ruin the aesthetic of the figure overall, but these are very minor gripes, so I've only knocked off 1 star. In the main, I do think that this is an absolutely excellent figure, and for someone who's not particularly a fan of the character and never intended to pick this character up in action figure form, I think that's high praise indeed. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.